Cool. Awesome. Pleasure to welcome to the podcast Nick Pecora, starting goalie from Lehigh. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Coach Shannon. Pleasure to be here. Excited to get into it.
Yeah, of course. I'd love to hear the story of the first time you jumped into goalie. Remember that?
Yeah, so it was a long time ago now. I was real young and started playing for Clarkstown Patriots and, maybe first grade. And our team needed a goalie. And I just really thought, I was like, yeah, might as well hop in there and get some shots because I have a twin brother who really liked to play in the field. And I was like, this works out well.
You just saw the goalie position and you're like, that's it. This is for me.
Yeah, exactly. I've never played anything but goalie and never regretted that either. Never looked
Really?
back.
So even in first grade, like were you never played like in the field at all?
No, never. I was
Oh
always a
wow.
goalie,
Yeah.
and it was always convenient because it would be like, all right, Pecora, you got to get a little better when you were younger. And, our
Yeah.
parents would throw us in the backyard. We have an older brother as well who played defense.
Okay.
So we'd have like a mini team in the backyard just scrimmaging whenever we were home.
Love it. Love it. So and you grew up like in New York, yeah?
Yeah, so I grew up in Rockland County, right near the Tappan Zee Bridge.
Okay. And so like from a lacrosse family, obviously if your older brother's, playing and I don't know if your parents played, but lacrosse was kind of there and is always kind of assumed, I guess you'd get into lacrosse.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were some pretty active kids, and at some point, I think my parents couldn't handle it anymore. So they were like, "All right, we got to sign these guys up for as many after-school sports that we can get them into." So growing
Yeah.
up, it was football, wrestling, and lacrosse, and ended up pursuing lacrosse in the long run.
Football, wrestling, and lacrosse. All right. Wrestling was my main sport in high school. And I feel like there's a lot of like similarities, especially when you talk about like low saves, like did you like do wrestling in a legit way or just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, so I wrestled through my sophomore year of high school
Okay.
until I really decided to focus on lacrosse
Yeah.
and was able to do, the states and stuff like that all through middle school. And that
Yeah.
was a good time. So definitely know, shooting steps and stuff like that.
Yeah. But like to me, like when I was learning the low save, I was like, oh, this is kind of like taking a shot, like in wrestling, that's that same kind of like movement where I get my hips down and kind of explode through. So I thought wrestling was a big help for me in the goal and more on the mental side because whenever you play like a single sport where you're like all alone, that really teaches you a lot about the mental game. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wrestling taught me a ton as a kid, and just going through individual sports are so different than team sports. But
Right.
when you really go into that goalie position, it's basically you versus the shooter more times than not. And at the end of the day, you versus the ball. And when you can really control your mental game, that's something that, wrestling definitely helped with, not getting down
Yeah.
on yourself after someone takes you down. You're down 6 points in the third period. Same thing as being down, letting two shots in a row, three shots in a row, and just looking
Right.
for that next save.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and like, in wrestling, you lose a match, and it's like at the end of the day, you got no one to blame but yourself, right? And I think that attitude
Absolutely.
of like, all right, I had a bad game or I had a bad practice, and like, hey, I got no one to blame but me. Let's just get back out there and keep working hard.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something that has been evolving in my game as I've gotten older is, being able to, when you're younger, it's so easy to, blame the defense and everything or
Mm.
blame yourself. And then, when we bring it up in huddles at the end of goals now, it's not so much like, all right, we missed this slide, I missed the save. It's more like, fellas, remember that ground ball we missed with, 60 seconds left in the shot clock? Like we picked that up. We're not even talking right now. So
Hmm.
just kind of looking for things to get to the root of the issue. And that's something that's evolved a ton in my game.
Nice. Nice. What do you say to a young goalie who's like dealing with that? Because young kids can be emotional, right? And like
Mhm.
you're playing in a game and you give up a goal and like your teammate turns around and goes, "Come on, man! Like you should have had that one." You know what I mean? Like kind of gives you that emotion. What do you say to a young goalie who's dealing with that on a consistent basis?
Yeah, so that definitely happens so much more often when you're younger is when the defenseman will get on you. But
Yeah.
something that I've learned is you've got to build up a repertoire with your defenseman. And that's basically, when you when you know that you let one in that you could have saved, even regardless if it's on the crease, if I let one in that's, stick side high that I was right behind and I really think that I'm gonna get it next time, I'll look at
Yeah.
the defense and be like, that's my bad, fellas. Like that one's on me. And
Yeah.
that'll make them more prone to just at the end of the day giving me the benefit of the doubt. And also, if there's someone that's just doing that all the time, it's okay to, tune people out at some point. If people are really getting on you all the time and they're not really responding to, positive feedback from you, sometimes you got to just be like, all right, like this is not the motivation I need in this game. And I'm gonna, get that intrinsically and find that within yourself.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. Or pull them aside like after practice and like, have a man to man or woman to woman chat about that. Cause a lot of times they probably don't even know the impact of what those comments can do. And if it's really bothering you and you don't say anything, then why would they know? Like, how would they know? Right. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it,
Absolutely. Those guys got to be your friends at the end of the day,
yeah, you
And
got the same goal.
yeah, absolutely. So bringing them up at the end of practice is another great thing to do. I completely agree.
Yeah. And then the final point on that for me is, when they play bad defense, let's say they get torched and you save one. Now, like, don't be afraid to let them know, like, hey, I bailed you out on that one right there. You know what I mean? So I got you.
Yeah,
I picked you up on that one. You could pick me up on the next one.
absolutely. I got your back, you got mine.
Yeah, there you go. That's cool. So how did you then learn as a first grader, how to make saves? Did you get some coaching or was it just a matter of, your brothers kind of ripping it on you and learn trial by fire?
Yeah, so, this is something that has been evolving with my game every season. And as a first grader, it was kind of trial by fire. And what kind of fueled that was, love for the game. First time we stepped on the field, I honestly fell in love with lacrosse. And I'd get home and, this was a little bit of a different era, but we weren't really like a video game family.
Hmm.
But me and my twin brother, we just hop outside and get shots because I loved it. And the other day I'd get hit a couple times. When we were younger, it would turn into, brother fights. But it was just something that was super fun. And it was trial by fire there. And then as I got a little bit older, especially towards the like these key development ages, like fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, we started going to lacrosse camps and stuff like that. And I like to credit my first ever goalie coach as Coach Kirst. And met him. So that's like Colin Kirst,
Colin
Cole
Hurst?
Kirst. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Colin Kirst's dad.
Got it.
And
Got it. Got it. Yep.
yeah, met Coach Kirst at Cardigan Mountain Lacrosse Camp, and then followed him over to Leading Edge. Got a lot of goalie coaching from him. Like to credit him as my first ever goalie coach, and really made strides in my development. And then towards high school, a big name is Drew Feely at Deerfield Academy. He was a UVM grad. He could absolutely pull it, and as a freshman, just seeing shots from that guy, he's shooting, close to 100 in the upper 90s when he's hands free, he's a goalie coach, he's not getting defensemen on him. So and he would just rip it, and it's really just it's a game of reps, and just seeing shots like that made me evolve so much quicker than I could have ever imagined.
Yeah. Love that. I want to go back to the love of the game because I taught this mental game course. I still do. Like when I work with the kids, and I tell them that like and when you think about like the mental game is kind of like this triangle of what you're trying to like build. I really think that bottom part of the pyramid, like the most important base of your mental game, is love of the game. Like your mental game all starts from there. If you don't have
Absolutely.
love of the game, then like it's going to be so hard to build like all these other things like confidence and overcoming setbacks and all of the, and all those other parts of the piece, right? Like you got to have that love of the game, and it sounds like that's kind of
Absolutely.
what driv you as well.
Even in college, like to this day, and love of the game is the most critical pillar of my goalie game. And so, just to give you an example, going back my freshman and sophomore year, I was behind James Spence, All-American goalie at Lehigh. He was phenomenal and learned a ton from him. But it's really hard to find that love of the game when you're just getting shelled in practice. You're going down to scout team because you're playing a righty goalie that week. They need you. And then my junior year, I was kind of stuck in that slump too. And that was my first year starting. And I was in a goalie battle with an excellent goalie, Caleb Creaser, who ended up having a great career at Marquette, played for Team Canada.
Yep.
And, my in the fall, Creaser was truly beating me. And then I went home for a winter break and just kind of sat down and I was like, dude, I'm not loving practice right now. And then came back in the spring and I was like, at the end of the day, like start, don't start. I just want to really enjoy what I'm doing. And I want this to be the best part of my day. And it was all about mentality. And I
Hmm.
went into practice and I was like, all right, this is going to be super fun. Just have fun. Like see the ball, have fun. Like you let a goal in, don't get down on yourself. And I ended up playing the best lacrosse I've ever played and got the starting job. And really haven't looked back, but love of the game is largely what I attribute earning my starting role at to.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, I was going to ask if there was ever a moment where your love of the game went fleeting and that was it. That's the story right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's great. I think, if a youngster, because a lot of times we get into the sport of lacrosse as youth for the love of the game. I mean, that's really like why you play, or at least why you
Absolutely.
stick with it, right? Because maybe your parents put you in lacrosse and you don't stick with it. But by year 2 or 3, if you're still in it, you play because you love it. And
Hmm.
it's easy then when you get into high school and you get to like, some more competitive matches to lose that love of the game and you don't play as well, right? You don't play as well. Your mental game
Absolutely.
goes out the window. And so I think taking some time, like you did, Nick, to really check your mindset of like, hey, like I need to have fun every time I go out there. Maybe even journal, like, why do I like this game? What, gratitude, what is this game giving me? And I think that level of reflection and that change in mindset helps you a lot.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, truly, this is optional. No one's ever going to be, especially in high school and college, forced to play and, against their will. And
Right.
this is something that should enrich your life. And if you don't love it and it's bringing you down, you got to find ways to love that. And, whether that's getting hit really hard with a shot and being like,
Yeah.
I love making saves, or, making a beautiful pass and being like, I love my stick skills. It's just breaking that down into components and really finding what you love about the game.
Yeah, and there's so many things about the game that you could
Mhm.
pick out. I mean, you just mentioned two, but it could be like, I mean, if you're not like a great goalie and you're a backup and you're like, hey, this is an opportunity for me to develop, my teamwork skills, my leadership skills, my communication skills, to get fit, right? To get in shape, to this is
Absolutely.
an opportunity for me, to deal with loss, to learn how to lose as a team, right? And not reach our goals and how do we overcome that setback. And so there's a lot of elements of the sport of lacrosse that I think that you can love, even if, getting hit on the thigh is not one of them.
Yeah, truly. And they're going to be in team sports the rest of your life. Even, that's something that college kids have to deal with a ton. Like, who am I without lacrosse? And, we
Yeah.
go into the working world after this. And at no point are we not going to be on a team anymore. There's always going to be people you have to rely
Yeah.
on. And
Yeah.
teamwork is something that's just a skill that is often underdeveloped, but through lacrosse goalies, you're kind of the cornerstone of that team on the defense. And it's something that you can really develop and some friendships you can get out of it that will never leave you.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. So you got to work with the great Mr. Coach Kirst, huh? Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, tell me about kind of some of the lessons learned from him because obviously Colin Kirst is one of my favorite goalies. And his dad sadly passed away at a very young age, but and his brother Cole's a great goalie as well. But yeah, I mean, kind of tell me about working with him and maybe some of the lessons that he instilled in you guys.
Yeah, so I was real young, and Coach Kurse was always this like up and very energetic guy, and just really made me love the game. And that was through a lot of positive reinforcement. And obviously, we got into the nitty-gritty as you do with all goalie coaches. I stepped through the ball when I was young. I had a big problem. Someone would call me a flopper and like would drop on low saves and stuff like that. And Coach Curse, we get into that stuff, but at the end of the day, he was great at positive reinforcement, and especially at Cardigan lacrosse camp, it was multiple sessions a day, multiple games. As goalies, I think it was like 14 days long, 13 days long. You're just getting shelled the whole time.
Yeah.
Easy to not love that. And every time he made a save, even if he was 4 fields down, you could hear him screaming like, "Yeah, let's go, Pecora." and it hyped you up and it really made you love it. And he definitely let you know when you were doing things right, and also let you know when you were doing things wrong in the right way. It was like,
Yeah.
listen, this is how you're doing it, but there is a better way, and let's see how the better way works for you. And if it doesn't, we can go back to this and we can work on it. But let's just try this out first. And that was really, how he was a great coach. And Colin is just an excellent goalie. He is,
Yeah.
he's unreal. We actually just played against him in our alumni game for Lehigh, and
Right.
he absolutely crushed it. He's phenomenal. Definitely runs in the family. And Caden, the youngest, he's gonna have a great career in college.
Love it. Yeah, love it. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, I think positive reinforcement is way stronger than like, so like here's what I need you to do and like when they do it, then like getting all hyped up about that versus like don't do this. And that I've kind of based my whole like all the videos I post on Instagram, a lot of them are like showing what you should be doing, like that positive reinforcement. Because I really think that's an easier way to learn than like showing a goalie getting lit up and being like, don't do that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I guess you can learn both ways, but to me, like the positive reinforcement is more fun and it makes goalies look cooler. And so that's what I'm going to go with.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah, there you go. Very cool. So, I don't know, what would you say like were some common mistakes that you made as a youth goalie, or if you could go back and kind of tell your young self some advice, what would that be?
Yeah, so my young self, I was real up and down. And that's been a problem that has reoccurred throughout, the years, but it was a consistency issue. And that was just basically because, you'd have a great game, especially as a young guy. You're seventh, eighth grade, sixth grade, even younger than that. People tell you you have a great game. It's easy to, ride that high and be like, I'm not gonna work as hard this week. I had a great game. I'm buzzing right now. And then
Hmm.
you go down and it's up and down. But, the biggest lesson I'd tell my younger self would be to fall in love with the process. And
Hmm.
what that is like really, again, breaking it down. But everyone's always so focused on the destination. And that is, I want to be the starting goalie. I want to be goalie of the year. I want to go D1. I want to play in college, whatever it is. Everyone's so focused on the end goal. But when you really break it down and you fall in love with the way to get to that goal, and that's, getting shots, stepping through every save, making the right pass in the clear instead of, making the same mistakes. And that's something that's huge, is just not making the same mistakes and really working on that. But when you
Yeah.
fall in love with the process, the destination seems to come much quicker. And,
Yeah.
it doesn't really feel all that far away too, because, you're like, all right, like I love what I'm doing right now, and the end will come. I don't know when, but it will at some point if I just keep loving what I'm doing right now. And
Right.
that's just something that's helped me a ton. And if I was a younger guy that kind of knew that, to fall in love with the process, not be focused on the accolades, the end result, I think that,
Yeah.
everything would have gone much smoother.
Yeah, I love that. That's why I'm much more of a fan of like process based goals, where like a lot of goalies say like I want to win, goalie of the year, or I want to have a save percentage above 60. And like a lot of times you can't, those are like things that are like sort of beyond your control in a way, right? Whereas if I say I want to take 100 shots a day, like that's a goal that's like a process goal. Like it's always in my control. Like I can always get out there and get the work in. And if I can do that, then that leads to those goalie of the year accolades and that save percentage. I don't know. Did you ever set goals? And how do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it just exactly what you mentioned, in and out of your control, and setting tangible goals rather than things that might be more up in the air than you assume. And what that looks like is, you know, sometimes, and like I will be completely honest here, sometimes you got to take your foot off the gas pedal and you're like, all right, I'm seeing way too much rubber and I'm starting to get a little agitated with it, and just like maybe take your foot off the gas pedal a little bit,
Yeah.
relax a little bit, take a deep breath. But truly, like, especially when I was younger, the shortcoming in my game was stick skills and clearing. So
Okay.
something like that would be, before practice, I want to get, 200 passes in with my right, and then all these different adaptations, get close to the wall, get far from the wall,
Hmm.
shovel passes. Started working on my left a little more in college. Haven't gone to it in games, but so I don't know if I will, just purely for how it's gone in practice. But hitting the wall was a tangible thing for me. It was like I want to hit the wall every day. And another thing that I did was juggling. And I got really into juggling at a young age. I thought it was awesome. And that was a Coach Curse thing. My first year at Cardigan lacrosse camp, I could not juggle. And Coach
Yeah.
Curse had us just sit there for 30 minutes trying to figure it out. And then once you get it, you get it. And now, like, I love to, before pretty much every single game, I won't stop juggling until I get 150 in a row. And I'll just do that. And that's like a tangible goal that I had to set when I was younger. It was like, all right, today I want to get 10 in a row. And
Hmm.
you don't stop until you get 10 in a row.
Right.
Or tomorrow I
Right.
want to get 20.
Right. That's, yeah, I love how you did that. Like, you could even create goals within each drill of like pushing yourself. All right, my goal is to get 150 tosses of the juggle. And then when you hit that, like, cool, now I'm going to go for 200. Now I'm going to go for 250. So yeah, I love how you did that.
Absolutely.
What was the secret of juggling? What you is it just
So
reps, or was there one like key moment where you're like, oh, this really helped?
I think it just clicks. So you got to get the first 1, 2, 3 motion down, and you rep that 1, 2, 3 motion,
Yeah.
and then you figure out how to throw that four. And then once you get in that rhythm, it just clicks one day. And also I don't look at the balls. Like I don't look at the balls at all. I like kind of like set my focus further and just kind of like let them go. And you just get into a rhythm and you're able to do it in your peripheral vision because when you're looking at this ball, you're going to lose this ball.
Yeah.
And so basically, what I would say would be get that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then just drill that fourth one. At just get really good at the 1, 2, 3, throw up the fourth one, and start getting in that rhythm.
What do you mean the fourth one? A fourth ball or the fourth throw?
So the fourth throw,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I never juggled in college, and then like since I've been talking, doing the podcast and doing all this, like everyone says juggling, 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 and now I'm a fully grown man, and I haven't been doing it, but I'm like I gotta learn just so I can show the kids that you can do it, you know.
It's
So
also a good party trick, people love
do it for
that
the party
whenever
tricks. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then you can
Um.
get it off the wall. I'll do it off the wall a
Yeah.
lot to
Yeah.
train reaction to shots and stuff like that.
Yeah. But you do that before every game.
Yeah, before every single game. And then a lot of times I haven't been able to get to it this year because my class schedule gets me right to the start of practice.
Okay.
But like last year, the year before, every time we do a carousel warm up, it's like I'll go high, someone else will go high, and like high, rotate, high. And when I'm out, I'll just be juggling.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. So it's important. It's definitely important. I'm still on my list to do. As my daughter is sitting there reading a book or whatever, I'm working on my game, you know. I'll
Yeah,
always
exactly.
improving, baby. Always
Always
improving.
improving.
That's cool. So when you were growing up, did you watch a lot of college lacrosse? And if so, like, what were who are some of the goalies that you like to watch?
Yeah, so I was a bit of a weirdo with this. I like didn't when I was younger, I didn't watch much college lacrosse. I loved high school lacrosse. I was
Okay.
like huge into like the high school goalies and stuff like that. And like, wow, that guy's awesome. Look at this Deerfield goalie, look at this St. Anthony's goalie. And loved watching highlight tapes and stuff. But my first real goalie inspiration was probably when I was really young, was a guy that was a couple years older than me. His name was Will Ramos. He's another Rockland County guy, and he was great. He was just like 4 years older than me, and I was always like, you know what, I want to be like Will. I want to be as good as Will one day. And he ended up having a good career, and he's a great dude. Still keep in touch, very often. And then when I was growing up, once I got to middle school, I actually went to Cardigan Mountain School after being introduced by the camp and then to Deerfield. But I really liked the way that Phil Goss played. He was at Deerfield and then went to Brown.
Brown,
And he was like the big guy. He wore like number 91, which is a little unconventional for me because, I'm not a big guy. I'm
yeah.
5'9". And
Yeah. Yeah.
I just watched him play and he crushed it. And I think I was more I thought the coolest part of like the high school goalie thing was like the confidence that you play with when you're a high school goalie. Like you're like, I'm the man. And when you're really as good as these guys are and going to college, and you have so much confidence when you're a high school goalie. Like I'm the man. Like, and you just play with a certain swagger that is seldom seen in college. And that was pretty cool. So I definitely say
Yeah.
like Will Ramos and Phil Goss are two guys that I really like to watch.
Love it. You still keep up on the high school lacrosse scene? Who are the goalies these days? Or now you're too busy doing your own game?
Now it might be a little too busy, but I'll keep in touch with the Goalie Smith Instagram account and stuff like that, and be
Oh yeah,
watching their highlights and stuff like that. Some of those guys are crushing it, and
I
then
know.
always keeping in touch with the Deerfield goalies, seeing how those guys are doing. Those guys are crushing it.
Yeah, love it, love it. Cool. So when did you first think about then playing D1 lacrosse? And talk to me a little bit about your recruiting journey.
Yeah, so super unconventional recruiting journey. But first thought about it was I can't even pinpoint a time because it was always something I wanted to do. It was
Hmm.
even when I was young, I was like, I want to play this game as long as I absolutely can. And, whether that was through high school and then no offers, that was as long as I could. But it was always my goal to be a Division I goalie.
Hmm.
And especially through high school, when you start to play on a bigger stage, I played for prime time, you get to see how you kind of stack up. And that's kind of when the hopes came alive, where I was like, all right, I can do this D1 thing for sure. And so that was kind of my D1 moment, but I was always like, all right, college lacrosse, definitely going to play this as long as I can. But my recruiting journey was crazy. We were the last grade that had a little bit of the exposure to the super early recruiting.
Okay.
So went on a couple of visits my freshman year, and then like midway through our freshman fall, they made the new rule. They switched the
Right.
rule. So that all got shut down. And then junior year started off as, a pretty heavily recruited guy, was able to talk to a lot of coaches, go to a lot of places, and ultimately ended up holding out for a school that, I won't call them out here, but it was a big ACC school that ended up not working out. And I told a ton of coaches, hey, listen, I'm holding off until this process comes to fruition, and pretty much got a guarantee from these guys like, hey, you're our guy.
Mm.
And then it didn't work out. And this is my junior year. And as a goalie, it's so crazy because a team takes one goalie, and all these places that had offered me when I told them, hey, I'm holding out, I had no choice but to offer another goalie. And then, you reach back out and they're like, I'm sorry, man, we got our keeper.
Wow.
And so that kind of, put me into a position that I didn't love being in. And, this was a culture shock for me because being a highly rated recruit, like I was in the top 100 or whatever the inside lacrosse thing was back then, and then top five goalies for our grade rankings, and always everybody around me was telling me, our club coach, our club players, like you're going to be committed by September end, and that just wasn't the case for me. And then I ended up talking to a couple more coaches, not getting places that I really liked, and I've always been not a more, but a very academically oriented guy. I always wanted to go to a great school, and then ended up choosing Navy, who is a Patriot League rival for us,
Mm-hmm.
and chose Navy, went to the Naval Academy prep school, and quickly figured out that that wasn't the path I was going to take.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was so worried to tell anybody that I was leaving because, all these coaches stuck their neck out for me, got me committed, vouched for me.
Sure.
And I was so worried to tell anybody. So I didn't. And then I got a call from Coach Scudder at Lehigh after I had been going through the leaving process. And he was like, hey man, listen, heard that you're leaving Navy. We don't poach from service academies, so call me when you're out of the gates of Navy, and we'll set some stuff up. And then end up having a couple other calls. And then right after Coach Scott called me, Coach Daniello texted me, "You're welcome. Let me know next time you decommit." And I'm like, this guy knows everything. So helped me out a ton. Ended up coming to fruition with Lehigh. And then this was dropped out in um, late July, and Lehigh school starts like the second week of August.
Hmm.
So I did not have a Common App, which is, the entrance exam, the entrance paperwork and everything for college, because the service academies don't use that. They use their own software. And Coach Scud was like, "Hey, just send me your Common App. We'll get this figured out." And I was like, "Don't have a Common App." And he was like, "All right, that's okay. Like, we'll get it figured out. Just log on, make an account." I go to log on, Common App's down for annual service. No making accounts, nothing. And it's until school starts and they release the next cycle of applications and stuff. So Coach Scud sends me over a PDF of the Common App. I print it out, write it all in by hand, scan it, send it over to Lehigh admissions, and ended up getting officially admitted like 10 days before school started.
Wow.
And then started my journey here. And it's been something that I've never regretted.
Wow. Good story. Good story. What do you
Yeah.
think? Kind of going back to that, a lot of plot. I got a lot of questions, but from the
Mhm.
very beginning of like, hey, I'm kind of holding out for this one school that I have in mind, right? And they even told me like, hey, like you're our pick. I mean, what would you do? Would you do anything differently in that scenario?
To be honest, I I don't know. It was, my dream school as a little kid. Got a ton of, Youth XL hoodies from them,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, yeah.
XYZ Lacrosse.
Right.
And, I don't know what I'd do differently other than, what it ended up coming down to was I didn't have my ACT yet, and
Oh,
my grades just weren't fully strong enough. I was like a B+ student. It was a
got it.
extremely academically challenging school to get into.
Yeah.
And I didn't have my ACC score yet. So that's something I've looked back on and been like, wow, I wish, I could tell my younger self, especially as a freshman and a sophomore, that, lacrosse recruiting is so much easier when you handle everything else. And that's something that I've instilled in college to get absolutely great grades, because when you're younger, you're kind of like, if I'm good enough at lacrosse, I'll get my pick at schools. But the reality of it is that just not the case right now. You got to have extremely strong grades if you want to get into these great schools. And especially as a goalie, when, it might be a little more valuable in a recruiting sense to, pick up the number 5 player in your grade over a goalie. And, he can have a little worse grades, but, they've already got a starting goalie and only one of us plays. So
Right,
as a
right, right.
goalie, you got to check every box. So if I could go back and tell my younger self, I'd be like, listen, man, like, leave no doubt, like in every aspect of life, leave no doubt and present yourself as a guy. And, I thought that lacrosse would work itself out, which ultimately, after I got my ACT score back, which was great, it ended up working out perfectly for me in the long run. But, as a young guy, I definitely hit the books, as hard as you hit the
Yeah,
classroom.
grades
As
grades are grades are super important, right? If you don't have the grades, it's like a non-starter. Um, I had Coach Bill Tierney on the podcast, and I'm like, hey, break it down for me. Like this is when he was coaching at Denver, but I'm like, break it down for me. I want to play at Denver. As a goalie, how do I get recruited? And the first thing he said was, you got to have the grades, right? You got to have the grades. That's like the most important thing. If you don't have the grades to get in the school, then like it doesn't matter how how many balls
yeah,
you can save or your stick skills or all this other stuff. But anyway, grades super important. So okay.
absolutely.
Um I think I know which school it might be because I also got rejected from that school as a high school senior just applying. But we'll move on. We'll move on. So
Found some
then
common ground.
yeah, there you go. So then you go to Navy, and then what do you think it was about the Navy? It was just too like because they're very structured, right? Like
Mhm.
0600, you're up and at 'em. Was it just that wasn't a good fit for you?
It was and no disrespect at all. Coach Amplo is the man. He was, got very close with him from the recruiting process. Great guy, great coaching staff, and absolutely prestigious school. So
Yeah,
no
yeah.
disrespect there,
No,
but at
great
the end of
school.
the
Yeah.
day, yeah, at the end of the day, it just wasn't for me. And
Hmm.
it was a feeling that I had kind of gotten right when I stepped on and went through, the the first day and getting everything in, and there was just a pit in my stomach. And gave it, some time, and just started realizing that, this 4-year commitment is actually, a 10-year commitment.
Sure.
And
Sure, sure. Because of the
and
service.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it's easy to overlook that in the recruiting process and be like, okay, like that's fine. That makes sense. College is free. But
Right.
once I got there, I was like, man, like, do I really want to be doing this for 10 years?
Got it. Got
And
it. Yeah.
that was kind of the thought that pushed me out the door was like, I don't want to be doing this for 10 years.
Yeah. And then you're in that tough situation where like everyone worked so hard to help me get in and I don't want it. Right. And maybe I
Yeah.
don't want it is not the right way to put it, but it's just not the right fit for me, would be a better way to put it. Right. It's
Yeah. You
tough,
feel
tough
ungrateful.
situation. Yeah. 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 And so
Yeah.
like you feel like you're stuck in a way. So what, like, I don't know. Would you do anything different there, do you think, going back?
Yeah. So, maybe it would just be to be a little more honest with myself in the recruiting process
Mm,
because
yeah.
at the time Navy had reached out. It had been all the way to, um, I think it was August of my junior year. And this was after, like I said, being a top five goalie, being a top 100 player, no one really saw that coming that I'd be uncommitted come August.
Right.
And so I got a little antsy and, Navy came across, great school, great team, and I kind of jumped on it without fully going through it in my
Mm,
head. And
yeah.
also, that relationship element, like I said, Coach Amplo is a really great guy and just kind of came full circle. I was like, all right, like this is a guy I can see myself playing for. And I didn't really process that 10-year commitment as well as I should have.
Mm,
But if we go back to, day of and dropping out and stuff like that, wouldn't do anything differently there. And it's a whole ton of phases to drop out of there. And the last one I had spoken with someone at the school who was the last guy I had to talk to leave the prep school, and we were just walking on a track, and we went through why I wanted to leave and XYZ. And then at the end, he looks at me, he goes, "Shake my hand and tell me that you'll never regret this in your life, and I'll have you out of here by the end of the day." And
mm.
shook his hand, said, "I'll never regret this in my life." And he goes, "Sounds good. You would have been a great guy here or whatever." And left later that day, haven't regretted it at all. Really think I was true to myself, and that was the right move to make.
Love it. Love it. So talk to me about Lehigh. You get to Lehigh. Would you say your goalie game changed, kind of moving up in levels? And if so, how? Talk to me about
Yeah, so like I said, came here a week after I got in. So bald from the prep school. So
that. Yeah.
crazy welcome to college. And it was a weird start because it was during COVID. And the day after I got here, I had ended up meeting some guys on the team the night before, and I got contact traced and put into isolation quarantine for 14 days, all alone.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And then I got out, spent 2 more days, got contact traced again, and got sent back into isolation quarantine by myself for another 14 days. But
Oh,
the
man.
guys were great during that because, we had guys on the team who were older. I knew the only guy I had known on the team when I committed was Cole Kirst. And, he was asking me if I needed food or anything. So that was great, just building that camaraderie, seeing guys that were willing to vouch for you right away. But goalie game wise, I'll get there. So came in and like I said earlier, I was a little bit more of a flopper of a goalie. I'd lay out a little bit, wouldn't step fully through and, end a lot of saves on my butt. And then I would say that I kind of got back to basics in college. And what that means is like stepping through saves and just being fundamentally sound. And, something that I realized that really helped me break that flopping habit was that, you know, we're always spending time not looking at the goal. The goal's behind us. We never really see it. But like if you turn around and see how little of a step it really is to cover the entire goal, you don't need to be stepping crazy wide. And I was like, I can get here in like not I can get to this pipe and not too much of a step. And so what it was for me was shortening my step to make it an athletic motion instead of something that was so large that I couldn't athletically follow through.
Hmm.
And it's way quicker than you really think it is after playing for so long. So that helped me, get through the saves and stuff like that. And then another big thing was stepping laterally instead of, at a 45-degree angle, which is kind of really evolved as I've been through college. When I was younger, all the teaching was you want to step out end too, and at a 45-degree angle. And at the end of the day, every goalie's different. But what really helped me was like letting the ball come to me rather than, getting myself out of position.
Mm.
And, you at the end of the day, all you have to do is cover the goal. And when I started playing my best ball, I was like, I'm going to step laterally and cover the entire goal that I need. And I'm just going to shorten my steps as well and just cover this 6x6 area instead of trying to, chase the ball. I'm going to protect the net. And, that's a great way to put it is basically instead of chasing the ball, I started protecting the net, and it made things a lot more clear for my game, and it made me a more fundamentally sound goalie.
Nice. Yeah, and I think especially as like smaller goalies, like I'm 5'8", right? You said you're 5'9", right? So as quote
Yeah.
unquote, just the smaller goalies, like sometimes we feel like we have to take those bigger explosive steps to get to the corners.
Mhm.
And then youth too, right? Sometimes youth are right in there, 5'6", 5'5", and they
Yeah,
feel like
exactly.
they feel like you got to, really reach to get to the corners. And to your point, turn around, look at the goal, and like, and you can see like you don't like you're right. Like a lot of times the save movement is just a little step, and a little move. And so like we're super quick with that and explosive with that, but you don't have to overstep, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you overextend yourself, it's about making everything athletic. And it should feel athletic to you. And at the end, like if you're feeling unathletic making a save, like you can make a save. And I made a ton of saves in high school on my butt that looked awesome, but
Yeah.
like they did not translate to college. And
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
shots are faster, guys are bouncing it instead of doing that, and it just didn't translate. And it might look cool, but at the end of the day, I was like, all right, I'll take, five more saves a game than one really looking cool save. So,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't have to overextend yourself, and especially for the smaller goalies, like don't be thinking about all the space that there is to cover, and it's more about all the space you already cover. And if you're thinking about how much net there is for them to shoot at, you're going to be thinking you got to cover so much stuff. But like if you really just take a step back and be like, this is how much I already cover, the amount they have to shoot at really isn't that much. It becomes mentally a lot easier to tackle.
Mm, love that. Love that. Sticking with the mental game. Do you guys work with a sports psychologist at all over there?
Yeah, so we worked with a sports psychologist for a specific guy for my first 3 years. He was great. And then just recently pivoted, and we have a ton of university resources that help us out in that department. But so my first 3 years, it was mind of the athlete and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty cool. But the sports psychologist, I went to him a couple times and spoke with him, and then still to this day speak with Coach Francis a lot about it and just more about the psychology behind the goalie position. I have the book on my bedstand over there, like how to be a great lacrosse goalie, and it's a lot of mental, but I really do believe at the end of the day that the mental element, especially once you got the talent, you got the skills. It's like riding a bike. When I'm having a bad game, I'm like, dude, I've been doing this for 18 years, like 19 years. Like I know how to save a ball, or like I throw a bad pass. It's like I've been doing this forever. I know how to pass the ball. It's the mental element that's so important. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, our sports psychologist was, and going back to that love of the game thing, and it was when I was playing poorly, it was kind of like, listen, man, like, why are you here? And it was like to be the starting goalie. And then he's like, all right, you're the starting goalie. Just pretend. This was when I was not the starter. Just pretend you're the starting goalie. Why are you here? And it's like, because I love lacrosse. And he's like, that's why you got to play. And
Mm.
you play because you love this sport. And, the mental element is just so strong. And, you know, I'm not going to say fall in love with letting in goals, but like, there's definitely be a part of you that gets a little fired up and a little, I'm going to make the next one a little pumped up.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, just like you got to learn how to tip your cap to shooters and stuff like that. Like I go back to Hopkins last spring in the NCAA tournament. Um, One of their guys shot a ball so quickly, and it was raining, that I got it completely with my stick, and it hit the side, and the stick turned in my hand, and it like plopped down into the net, and it was a goal. And like at that point, I was like, caps off, dude. That was the fastest. I've never had a shot turn my stick. Like caps off to you.
Yeah,
So just basically knowing which battles to fight and what not to fight with this. And that's something the sports psychologist taught me a lot of.
got it. Love it. Um, what's the book that what you don't have to go get it, but I was just curious, what's the book title? Do you remember?
Um, Thinking inside the crease.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
saw it.
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 I got my copy right here. It's
Yeah.
all about the mental game. Coach Chris
Yeah.
Buck. Yeah. Cool. And then so when you give up a goal, do you have some sort of like now, last season, do you have some sort of like routine that you always go through?
Yeah. So this is something that Coach Nesdale taught us. And it's Coach Nesdale, I believe, is still at Yale. He came over to Lehigh for my freshman spring when the Ivies weren't playing, just stay on the horse and keep coaching. And he taught us a ton, but he had us do this thing that was we call our mental reset, and we weren't allowed to tell any of the other goalies what our mental reset was. But it's for a time where you're just like really not seeing it. I don't do it after every save, but like if I'm really not seeing it, let 4 or 5 in a row, I'll do my mental reset. And what it is, it's a 3-step process. It's like a deep breath, and you go 4 in, 4 out, take your deep breath, then you do a physical component. And what my physical component is I'll touch my calves. I'll just like give both my
Mm.
hands will, give my calves a little slap, and then you say a saying to yourself on the
Yeah.
third. Like you can
Yeah.
whisper to yourself, you can say it in your head, and you do a deep breath, your physical, and then you say something to yourself. Um, Coach Nesdale emphasized that you don't tell anybody, but what you're saying is this is just for you. So I won't spill the beans, but
Wow.
mine is mine has to do with something that my dad would always tell us when we were younger, and it just brings me back to just back to myself. And so I go through that 3-step process, and I just kind of forget about everything that has led up to that, and it's just a new game from there.
Love it. Love it. I knew that routine because years ago, I do these lacrosse goalie summits where I invite like coaches to kind of present. And years ago, I had Jack Starr, who was the goalie when Yale won like the national championship.
Yep.
And he taught us that exact routine. And so when he said the Yale coach taught us, I was like, here we go. I love it. But yeah,
Checks
awesome.
out.
Yeah, it checks out. It's exactly
Yeah.
what he taught, right? It's the deep breath because sometimes you get just so like you just get
Worked up.
so short in breath and that makes you nervous and that deep breath will calm you down. And then something physical and then something verbal. And then along the way, I've added something visual too, as I've seen some goalies have success with that. And there was even this ice hockey goalie who would like take his water bottle and squirt it up, and he would find like one drop of water and just follow that drop of water all the way to the ground. Something visual to kind of get yourself locked back in. So,
I do that every game, by
you
the
do?
way. Yeah, I saw our hockey goalie in high school. He ended up having a great college career at Holy Cross, Thomas Gale,
Okay.
and he was unreal in high school. He was always doing that on the ice,
All right. I
and
wonder if he learned it
I
from Holtby.
implemented it.
Braden Holtby who I
Yeah,
saw it from. Maybe he learned it from him.
I do it every game.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
What else? What else you do pregame? We got the juggling. We got the vision exercises. Or water toss. What else?
Yeah, we got our pregame playlist. I'll be juggling with
Mm.
the pregame playlist going and
What kind?
stuff
You
like
got some
that.
tasty jams on there? Just to interrupt you. Sorry. What kind of jams you going with?
Yeah, so it's a lot of rap, but it's also a
Yeah.
lot of rock. You got Seven Nation Army, you got Bleed It
Yeah.
Out, stuff like it's just stuff like that. And our team walks out of the locker room to Bleed It Out. So, it's a song that I will not listen to unless it's before a lacrosse game because,
Yeah.
I gotta keep that feeling sacred. But
Sure. Sure. Sure.
a lot of rap there just to get hyped up. And, a lot of guys are different though. This actually goes back to the sports psychologist, but he told like when we're on the bus to a game, I, I won't be, listening to my pregame playlist. It'll only be when I'm trying to. He described it as like an energy peak, and like once you go up, like you don't just level out, like you do go down, and you got to conserve as much energy as you can for the game. So if you're getting all hyped up on the bus, it's kind of a waste
Yeah.
of energy, and
Ah,
that's
good
going to
point.
come
Yeah.
down. So I'll listen to chill music on the bus, like Mount Joy and stuff like that, and then once, I got the eye black on, I'm all suited up, about to go take some shots. I'll turn on the pregame playlist. And
Beauty.
some other pregame rituals. Whenever my mom's there, I always find her in the stands, give her a little wave, say what's up,
Yep.
stuff like that.
Awesome. Do you ever have you ever done any like vision, like specific vision? And we talked about the vision of watching the ball, the water drop. I'm curious, have you ever done any like that, hand-eye boards or like vision exercises?
So not quite. I haven't done
Yeah.
the hand-eye boards and stuff like that. I feel like the
Yeah.
concussion testing every year. It's like the vision test with all that stuff. But nothing crazy like that.
Okay.
For my vision though, it really goes back to that juggling off the wall and
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
because
Right.
that way, yeah, you have to track the balls after they like change path.
Right.
But that's really about that.
All right, cool. Well, awesome, Nick. Thank you so much for coming on. Oh, I did want to ask you about working with Coach Alex Reddy, great friend of the program, awesome goalie mind. Since has he was there at Lehigh for a couple of years working with you guys, went on to Duke. Now I think he's a defensive coordinator somewhere else.
High Point.
High
Yep, with
Point.
Coach
Yeah, yeah.
Crawley from Lehigh.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyway, working with him, tell me about your experience working with him and maybe some things that you learned.
Yeah, Coach Reddy's an animal. He's a great coach, and
Yeah.
um, all praise to him. He really knows goalies, and a lot of the time, this isn't necessary, but it takes some of the best goalies in the world to be able to recognize these issues that elite goalies are going through. And Coach Reddy was an absolutely elite goalie. Played in the PLL, was had a great career at Denver. But one thing that I really remember about Coach Reddy now, since it's been almost over 2 years now, is that guy could shoot the ball. And a lot of goalies, like, we don't have great shots, but like
Yeah,
Coach
yeah.
Reddy could sling the ball, like better than a lot of guys on offense. And he definitely helped us out with that. And then Coach Reddy does some drills that I really liked, called, like, I remember like the Manning drill where he'd shoot it and you like instantly have to hit an outlet over the shoulder, and like he'll count how many times we actually hit the target or something. He was huge about shooting around screens and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
Coach Reddy is a guy that, you get coached by and you're like, this guy really understands, because a lot of other coaches will be coaching the big topics, like the stereotypical, like making saves and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
Coach Reddy coaches the things that like real, like, goalies know that they need to be coached on, and that's seeing shots around screens and how to go about that, and
Mhm.
quick outlets that might not feel natural, and unsettled situations pipe to pipe, and just things that, because at the end of the day, you make it to college, fundamentally you're a great goalie, and your fundamentals don't really need all that work. But those little things that don't really get all that notice, Coach Reddy drills them in, and that's how
Nice.
it takes you from being a great goalie to an elite ball stopper. And he's one of the best I've ever worked with.
Yeah, when you can work on that like nuance of the game, right? And when you've got your
Yeah,
fundamentals locked in, kind of go to that nuance. Um, it's
absolutely.
funny what you mentioned about not goalies not being good shooters. 'Cause I feel like in college I
Yeah.
was a good shooter, but like I can't do it anymore. I remember I was hosting like a clinic, and like at the very end we are doing King of the Hill, and it was
Mhm.
down to like the two best goalies because they had made all the saves, and like I couldn't score on them.
Yeah, it's bringing back to shooting. We did goalie wars the other day in practice. We had a
Okay.
goalie session, and I like pulled my back, like taking a shot. I'm just not made for shooting.
Dude, I have it. So I wanted to do. I had this idea for a video where I was gonna like rip shots like right at the camera so that goalies could like make the saves. And on the last one, like I kid you not, I almost tore my ACL. Like I got like all
Yeah.
twisted up, and luckily, like my foot kind of got caught in the grass, And luckily, like I did a little hop to not like avoid injury, but it would have been so embarrassing to like one, like do that and then catch it on video because I,
Yeah. Oh, I never feel more unathletic than when I'm shooting a lacrosse ball. I
yeah,
just, after seeing all the guys on our team, I will say though, goalie coaches, most underrated shape ever. These guys are just shooting on us all practice.
right, right,
And,
right.
once you really do that and like coaching younger goalies and stuff like that along the way, it is exhausting. And
It
like
is.
these
Yeah.
goalie coaches just crank it for every day. And underrated best shape on the coaching staff is always the goalie coach.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, it's just like anything else. I mean, I hadn't shot that, that many shots in 15 years, but if I was out there every day, then it would get better and better and better, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right, man.
Game of reps.
What about your stick? What do you go with for your wand?
I've got the STX Eclipse 3, which
Yeah.
gotta keep DL. We're a Warrior school. But no.
Okay.
So I get it twisted up by Mr. Wonderful. He's a wizard. That guy
He is,
crushes
man.
it.
Yeah.
And go with the hard mesh, but the Eclipse 3 is the best head I've ever used. So, I had issues with the 2 because it would hit the top and then bend back and plop in.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened to me once with the 3. So, and,
Uh,
I just think STX does it best with goalies, especially. And, because it's just a nuanced position, and some of these other companies that aren't, maybe 100% focused on lacrosse don't really understand the nuance of it. But
yeah.
SCX does it right, especially with the Eclipse 3.
Eclipse 3 is awesome. So how does that work? Like being a warrior school, like you guys as a goalie, you can use whatever head you want.
Yeah, so I'll have to cover up the logos and stuff
Got
like
it.
that.
Got it. Yeah, yeah.
But it's out of pocket. It's all out of pocket for that stuff like that. So
Oh, so if you use
yeah,
the warrior heads, then you'd get them for
it's
free.
free.
Oh,
Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, 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 yeah.
hmm
All right, we can't put a price on saves.
Nope. If it and gets me a couple extra saves, I'll pay anything for it.
Yeah. And you had mentioned getting hit in the side and having it twist. Do you hold the plastic or do you like kind of like touch the plastic with your top hand?
I hold the plastic, and something that like I think is good about my game is, I'm barely holding my stick. Like it's like basically like two fingers, and if you came over and like pushed the stick lightly, it would probably fall out of my hands. And that's
Hmm.
because I just like to have extremely soft hands so that I don't give up rebounds.
Yeah.
And the Eclipse 3 is nice because it's got these like two ridges. And if it hits the side in, a non-rainy NCAA tournament game, it most of the time it'll catch on my glove or something like that. But I'll hold the ridge and then I tape around the neck just to give myself a little more support. It looks goofy, but just give myself a little more grip and a little more feel. I'll tape
Yeah.
around the neck so it doesn't do that.
Oh, okay, I got it. Um, yeah, well, that's smart, right? Because I mean, I talk about kind of like tense muscles are slow muscles and loose muscles are fast muscles. And so
Mhm.
the 100% enemy of goalies is tension. And if you're gripping that stick, right? Like I feel it in my bicep, I feel it in my shoulder. I'm
Yeah.
tense, right? Oh,
Absolutely. Just playing loose. It's one of the best things you can do.
love it. All right, Nick. Man, I feel like we could go for another hour, but this seems like a good spot to wrap it up. If you had to leave the goalies out there with a final piece of advice, what would that be?
Yeah, I'll go back and touch on it again. Truly just fall in love with the process. And
Yeah.
once you fall in love with the process, getting some extra shots, hitting the wall, everything else will come. And, good luck to everybody in their seasons this spring.
Yeah, good luck to you. Next season, I'll be watching for sure. And yeah, man, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Coach. Have a good one.